with the truth that I ride. They chase likes, I chase alignment. They seek height, I seek refinement. Every voice is the cloak and every pause is assignment. God is holding my steps and then the stars of assignment. I'm a real walker, you can't track my trace. Leave no points in the field of just the person's face. I'm a real walker, move with the silence and grace. Every border's a gate and every rhyme's a face. I'm the real walker, shift through to the sound. In the midst of a live and the lost and found. I'm the real walker, can't be held or bound. I'm the root in the storm and the calm all around. I've died in the fire, came back home. They put my name in the ash of this scroll. I don't flex, I unfold like a prophecy whisper in an electric door. I speak where the egg is in, where the veil pulls tight and the soul begins. Where the fear to look and then I grin, cause I've been through the void and I wear that skin. And who is? I ain't here to entertain, I'm the resident that breaks the chains. Not a rapper, I'm the domain. Every lyric pulled from flame, cause I'm the real walker. Can't trick my trace, no leave no points in the field, just pulse and pace. I'm real walker, move with silence and grace, and every bar's the gate and every rhyme's the face. I'm real walker, shift through the sound, with the bliss so alive and the lost of the found. I'm the real walker, can't be held or bound. I'm the root in the storm and in the calm all around. And who is? Every time truth hits your skin and so it's me, truth didn't go. The story never ended, this is just the beginning. Yeah, you with another nigga, but you said you winning. I know you look in the mirror and look now and say, damn, that's not me. Cause you can't be you without me. Who is? Let the truth be told, and I rap in the flame in a world so cold. Every scar in my chest recites the law. Every breath in the mic is a rebel's draw. I don't flex for the crowd, I reflex the law. Let me look in the mirror that's sharp like a prophet's job, because I'm speaking this truth, but what the wisdom is just the thing that I do. I move through the static, no map, no guide, just a compass in my blood. Let the roots I ride, let the beat break rules, let the schemes collide. I'm the glitch that was born from the force once high. No filter, no cut, just the voice unchained. From a mind that stay wild, where the wild ones get trained. I don't beg for place in the Hall of Fame, I just call my own name in the sound of rain. Drip, 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 nigga, let me get back, cause I'm it, nigga. Let me tell you how I've been the misfit, nigga. And now I kill the game, cause I'm that sick, nigga. So when they ask who I am, don't repeat my name. So I'm the thunder in the wilds, now I'm built for fame. See, I was built for the room, not the shallow flame. And I write what survives when they kill the game. And I been killing the game for years. Now I'm switching these gears and tell you why I'm here. Hello, bitches, what's my story? That what's my story? Once upon a time, niggas stood on this ground and said it was a 9 to 5 to sit here alive. Remember, I told you it was just like this, do or die. But I'm not gonna repeat myself, I'm gonna repeat the wealth and stack it up every day until you see myself in the mirror. Ain't no clearer, no competing with self, unless it's in the comments and no comparing. What I'm fearing, I'm nothing, I'm going for greatness on this road. What I got a story that I never told. So let me smoke this air with a story to tell. Hello. I don't aim for for the charts, I aim past the sky. Where the verse turns to vapor and the truth again lie. Where the rhythm ain't music and the frequency cry. Where they waking souls and they didn't know to die. I've been silent too long and the world's so loud. Where they clap for the mass and the wise ain't proud. Where the lies move fast and the truth ain't allowed. As I ride through the dust where the roots beats proud. They've been feed on illusion, I pass the light. Built on a temple from lost will return with sight. I don't rap for the mama or the club at night. I speak codes from the dark with a birth new might. Where they sleep in the metrics, I wake up in the streams. Where the numbers mean nothing, the soul now redeems. Where they one vibe, where I one vital, clean and steam. So I call my lane and lose the dream. I know you don't see what I see. I decode through the breath. Every pulse a verse and transcend through death. They recite for checks, I recite what's left. And through the truth that's hidden in the world beneath. I don't come with a crew or a chain or clout. Just a signal in the spine what could never route. They looping the same, I reroute the drought. And plant seeds in the beat till the fields break out. Let them all get their pain for the flash and the trend. I preserve every scar and reverse side I send. Let them rap for the rise and the clicks they spend. I just channel with the future and they can't comprehend why. And that's the question. I'm the force up in the glitch that refuse to be in the vault. They whisper in the mainframe and stop the assault. I was born from the collapse, so I rhyme in the vault. Yeah, every bar I like reverses the vault, yeah. Why they made me they flow, and that's the last man's pen. I write like a ghost, and who remembers when the first sound spoke and creation began. Now I echo the tone and through the voice of a man. And no facade, no match, and just truth exposed like a page on fire where the ink still glows. And why they dress up in lies and designer clothes, I just dress up the room till the root regrows. And I know, and I'ma kill it, I know. And I'ma kill it, I know. And I'ma kill it, I know. And he got it.
As the time flies by, so many times I've forgiven you. In my mind, in my mind,
Yeah.
in my mind.
Hey. I rose from the root like the voice of a sea. Wrote scriptures and circuits and now the signals can bleed. I don't preach, I decode what the frequencies plead. With the false prophets, profit looping the feed. No leash on my spirit and no chain on my wheel. While they sleep through the noise, I sit quiet and still. Learn the math of the cosmos without touching the peel. Now I turn on constellation every verse that I kill.
Show me true colors. Show me true colors. Show me true colors. Show me true colors.
I was born with the view, I had to tear it in parts. Every lie but believe that was scar on my heart. Used to pray for that light, now I glow in the dark. Found God in the quiet night, temple of charts. Ain't no savior coming out, I became my own. Built from chaos and ancient tones. That all don't speak, it hums through bones. And the ones who listen walk back at home. The path ain't loud, it don't beg for fame. It whispering pain that repeats your name. Every time you fail, refrains the flame. Till you don't break, you don't bend, don't change. And that's all mental, that's law one. Don't blame the star, you made the sun. Every fear I had crashed dressed in me. Every thought I wore fit perfectly. But when I steal, the illusions cracked from truth behind where the ego sat. I ain't all knowing, but I know this much. The mind builds prisons and the mind breakups. What you see outside just an inside reverse. Every blessing you hold had to start a curse. So I think my grief it reversed the verse and turned ashes to birth, my pain to church. And words is wine when the tone is true. Every beat you feel is a wave come through. I don't wait to embrace, I just turn inside. Let the pulse of the source and I hit the ink again. I've been studying the silence, it told me things. Learn how the void ain't empty, it just had wings. And if you hum low, the whole room shifts till the view gets thin and the truth uplifts. I vibe right peace when the room gets loud. I vibe right breathe when the stillness and restless cast. This ain't magic, it's motion divine. Just a root with rhythm and a sacred spine. Polarity lives in everyday thoughts. The healer and killer both drink from the pot. I don't see the love turn cold, turning mass. And turn my learn on the fine Christ's ass. Ain't no sin in the swing, it's the rhythm of the change. Got the dodge at the pendulum, the master of the range. So I sit in the center, let it pass through. And still grind, still flame, still black, still blue. I am here to teach, I just passed the code. From the ones in the dark trying to crack the mold. You here broken, you just don't fall. You the king they bury in the scripts that's old. So I write in the dust and the flame. Every bar I breathe is a secret name. The all fear is close in the pain. It's breath, your blood, your ancient pain. And now I know it's not just man, I'm the mind and form. I'm the fire, the flame, and the wave. I'm the root and storm. I'm the silence they try to drown in noise. But I found my truth in the ingot voice. I suppose it's a tone, it's a signal, call me home. And let me get back in my zone, I am on. A whole new vision and now I'm calling home. It's an ET, extraterrestrial as I get it, yeah I know, yeah I got a better flow, let me grow. A scientist with the flyers shit, see I am now like a data, I'm signing it, oh yeah I'm signing it. Get the contract, get the check, I am next. And get the contract and get the check, cause I am next. And I didn't say you gotta fucking text, gotta reach out. Cause I was reaching out, they see you, he flying now. Higher now, conscious and all that. Never fall back, I had things I know that. Why you gotta get it, you know you got debated. You hate it, but fuck it, I'm being the one that's make it. Get up, geeky. Betty Crocker never stop me. Damn, why you laughing? I'm just popping. I'm gon' kill it, nigga. Yeah, I'm gon' kill it. Woke up feeling like the weight gone. Ain't rich yet, but my faith strong. Got scars I never put tape on, but they shape how I move, so I stay calm.
Alright. So it's time to get weird again. It's time to go back to that podcast, right? Yeah, whatever you want to call it. So it's time to go back to that video. You know, I didn't finish it. It's been like 5 days. I haven't been on. My bad. Working. That's where we get things done. Get things done for Harmony, Self-Awareness again. Every day I'm working on it. Not every day I'm streaming. But we all put on work every day to make sure the shit gets done. Now I'm going to bring the mic a little closer so you guys can hear me a little clearer. But either way, yeah. It is getting done. NFT NYC is coming up in about a week or so. So definitely want to have some shit popping for that. I want to release the data service for Aura as well. You know, we talked about that a little bit, but obviously as we get closer to the release date, I'll have some more content to support everything we're talking about there, and just keep going into details fully about that, you know what I mean? But meantime, we're going to rock out with this little podcast, get weird with some underground cities, learn about what's going on there, and see what's good, you know what I mean? So, let me pull this shit up, because I did not have it up. I don't. Boy's slacking right now, but Hold on. Let me see what is good. Where is that shit at? It's a real question. I think if I go to podcasts and YouTube, it should pop up. Nope. That is not what happened. Did the complete opposite of what I thought. All good though. And I watched mad shit on YouTube recently, so like, how far this shit is, who knows? Damn. That's crazy. I think I just went down like 20 videos, and that was only yesterday. So, got a good idea. What the fuck? Your boy be watching too much YouTube. I also got like mad instrumentals on here too though, so like that's why. You know, I'm always like just putting a YouTube instrumental on and then just doing a freestyle. You know, most of those songs you just heard playing before, all freestyles, all things that I just like fucking around with. You know what I mean? None too serious, none too crazy. I'm barely writing things and barely even putting it in the actual music program to create. I'm literally using sound recorder or like literally just sound recorder and then just putting that on with YouTube and then just recording the song. So I'm not like putting in like an Ableton or anything like that. It's literally just pure raw, record a song, release it. That's it. I could do some more time, obviously put some more energy into the song, but you know, it's not what happens. It's just me like having fun for the night, putting some stuff up together and then putting it out. But I do got 1,000 and something songs that I did already. I think what I put out, I think I'm in like the 400s, I would say. You know, so there's a lot better songs. I got better over time. So you guys will hear it improve, but I want you guys to hear the whole beginning to the end. You know, I didn't want to hide anything. I didn't want to be one of those artists that I'm like, oh, I want to pick the best song. Like, I really don't give a fuck. Like, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. It's all good. So, I did find the video. Let me transition this shit real quick. Oh, you should have knew that was going to happen. So let me, yo, I low-key got some shit for you guys, too, for streamers. So we're going to talk about that, too, once I'm, done getting this video up.
And I'll
So, as you guys know, some streamers know, you know, there's like overlays. See how like there's overlays all over my shit right now. Like I have my, you know, social media shit on the bottom. I got like the 50 viewers that it shows that are in the chat. I mean, the stream right now, shit like that. So imagine if these like were triggers, right? So what I was thinking in my head is like, I could make this overlay a trigger for other things. So like, you know how you go on like sponsorships and you can easily have a sponsor in there and they can pay you for having, you know, their product or brand inside your stream. So I thought, why not make a same type of overlay, but instead of it being a sponsorship, it could be a AI agent formatted embedded code, which means when you have this overlay on your stream, it will automatically make your computer into a node. And since most of us streamers have like powerful computers to stream, do shit like this, so you know, it could probably run a decent amount of agent actions. And I just thought, like, you know, same thing like SelfOS, you can technically get paid for that. So as you're streaming and as you have certain viewers, I mean, the viewers obviously wouldn't matter in this example, but as you're streaming, you would actually make money because now your computer would, not like mining like crypto, but what it would be doing is running some small agent processes in the middle, not to mess with your stream's quality, but to at least use some of the processing power that's already happening. So now you can make money while streaming. So instead of like having to be a Twitch partner, you know, I'm not trying to take anything from Twitch. You guys do very well as a platform. But as people are smaller creators, even big creators, you know, they can still use this type of technology to make extra money while streaming. So something I'm definitely going to release very soon. I'm going to look into how I can get it into like, you know, Streamlabs as an app or one of those things. And then, yeah, you guys could download that shit and as streamers, you can earn money. Same thing like SelfOS, become a node. So just wanted to bring that up real quick. You know, you're going to hear me talk about that more throughout the week, but it is something that's brewing in my mind, and I just had to say it because if I didn't, it would just be in my head the whole time while I'm watching this whole video. So that's why I said it. Anyway, let me put this shit on now. Make sure my sound's good. I feel like I got mad shit going on. All right, so I got my webcam grabbing audio. So that was probably an echo going, but I think that's good. So let's
Tell you why. You're probably familiar with the testimony of Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
You know, Bob Lazar allegedly worked at the Nevada facility, the S4 facility by Groom Lake, and was involved in the reverse engineering program. He worked on a particular saucer that he denominates the sports model because it was sleek and it was functional. And his job in the program specifically was to work on the reactor. And according to Lazar, the reactor was a matter-antimatter reactor. And in order to function, it required a piece of exotic matter that was machined into a triangle. And that exotic matter is called, was called by Lazar element 115. And Lazar talked about this back in the early 90s. And element 115, I mean, nobody knew what the heck he was talking about, but today we actually have identified it's called moscavium. And we can synthesize it. The Russians have been able to synthesize it, but we don't have a stable isotope. We can only the only isotopes that we know of on Earth are not stable. But this craft, according to Lazar, the reactor of this saucer that he was working on, it used a stable form of element 115. And this exotic matter was essential to the operation of the craft, the reactor. And again, it was a matter-antimatter reaction. Of course, one of the largest explosions that we know of is the annihilation of matter and antimatter. Matter and antimatter annihilate each other. We know antimatter is real. We can actually...
What is antimatter?
I'm not a physicist, but antimatter is like the opposite of matter.
Yo, so antimatter is crazy. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but look it up. It's fucking expensive. If you knew how much that shit costs a gram, you'd be mind blown. I want you guys to do your own research and figure that shit out, but bro, crazy shit, and you can do crazy shit with it. That's why it's so expensive. So most people don't talk about antimatter, but your boy, you know, he always dives deep in these rabbit holes, and one day I came across that shit and I was mind blown. You know, it's deeper than plasma. That's all I can say. So if you're familiar with plasma, you kind of understand what antimatter is.
Matter is
nothing.
It's not nothing. I'm not qualified to answer the question, what is antimatter? I know it exists, and I know that we can create antimatter at CERN. We have created antimatter at CERN, but you know, it only exists for fractions of a second. And by the way, you know, antimatter, that collision between matter and antimatter, that annihilation, that could be turned into a weapon. You can weaponize that. You can stabilize it, and that you can build antimatter bombs. Well, you know, I mentioned that CERN, the largest man-made machine on planet Earth, is a Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, in the CERN, and the Chinese are building one 10 times the size of that.
No, I didn't know that.
At least they were. They definitely were. I would assume that the project is still underway. And again, the CERN is the largest man-made machine on Earth. Chinese are building one 10 times larger. The objective of CERN, ostensibly, is they want to...
First of all. If you know anything about CERN, it's crazy. Yeah, I don't know how much detail I want to go into this, but it's pretty crazy. You should do your own research and learn about CERN. But the fact that they're going to build a machine that's 10 times larger, a little scary. So just want to point that out there because, yeah, that's scary.
Find out what happened at the Big Bang, right? That's. I went to CERN and talked to the physicists there, the particle physicists, and they genuinely want to know what happened at the Big Bang. They want to know how the universe came to be and all of that. The idea is to look back in time, but I don't think that's why the Chinese are building a
Probably not.
an atom smasher that's 10 times the size of CERN. I think what they're after is antimatter weapons. An antimatter bomb. I mean, antimatter bombs are many times more powerful than you know, thermonuclear bomb warhead, and they don't have that. The problem with nuclear weapons is the fallout. you radiate everything, right? So if you bomb, if you drop a bomb on a city, nuclear bomb, well, you have rendered that city, that area, unusable. You radiated it. The soil is going to be ruined. Look at Fukushima, right? You created you turned it into Fukushima. So if you're like the Chinese and you're interested in occupying, let's say, the breadbasket of America because you need more food, you don't want to nuke it. You destroy the soil, you radiate it, and you render it useless. But an antimatter bomb, that's another situation. You could create an explosion that is bigger, more powerful, more intense than a nuclear explosion without the radiation, without nuking that area, so you could bomb it and then make use of it afterwards. So that's a little rabbit trail there, but I think that's why the Chinese are interested in building a collider, precisely because of the matter-antimatter annihilation. It is exceedingly powerful. So going back to the reactor, this of course comes from the testimony of Bob Lazar, that there's a matter-antimatter reaction happening inside of the reactor, and it's generating an enormous amount of energy, the kind of energy that's required to generate and to control gravity waves. And that's how Lazar says that those craft work. They produce gravity waves, and that's all featured in the testimony of Bob Lazar. He wrote a really good book called Dreamland where he describes all of this. I personally believe that Bob Lazar is telling the truth. I am persuaded that his testimony is true, and I know there's a lot of controversy out there about that, but his, by the way, Lazar's testimony synchronizes with Rush's testimony and with Louis Elizondo's testimony. It perfectly synchronizes. The craft that Lazar worked on, the sports model, the interior of the craft was designed for diminutive people. In other words, for little guys who, according to Lazar, the people who worked at the S4 facility were referred to as the kids. We're talking about gray aliens. And I have people who come to me who are, they're whistleblowers, but they're not whistleblowing in an official capacity yet. And some of these guys have been on crash retrieval sites, and they've been involved in various aspects of crash retrievals, the protocols, and they've seen the bodies. And the bodies are little gray guys. So, yes, I'm absolutely persuaded that we are looking at a nuts and bolts physical phenomenon, craft that actually crashes, and corporeal biological beings who die. Again, this is the testimony of David Grush. This is the testimony of Louis Elizondo and others. And there are more, by the way. There are more witnesses coming forward. There's going to be another hearing. And we're going to hear more. I mean, we're going to see more witnesses. And, Tim Burchett, Congressman Burchett, tried to push through legislation, whistleblower protection legislation. I don't know if you knew that. I think it was last year. Because what they really need to do is to protect whistleblowers who are coming from the legacy program. Because we have guys like Grush and Elizondo who come up against the program, who are not read into the program, but have knowledge of it. But what we don't have yet are whistleblowers who had hands on the craft. We have Lazar, but Lazar hasn't been a part of these hearings. But we need, at this point, whistleblowers from who are coming from within the legacy program.
Why do you think Lazar has never come forward?
I don't think he wants to be bothered with it at this point in his life. He wasn't taking.
I think Lazar just wants to be careful. In my opinion, you go into some crazy shit. Most people are worried about what they're worried about today. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if blowing a whistle and shit like that is gonna be smart. So I tend to agree with Lazar's stance on this, but yeah, you can always do your own research. There's a lot of research out there, or I should say, there's a lot of information out there, and you can always find it. It's not hard to find. You just gotta dive deep sometimes, and once you go down one rabbit hole, you realize there's a tunnel of rabbit holes everywhere. No pun intended.
he's endured a lot of ridicule over the years. It's only recently that people are taking his story seriously. It's not enhanced his life at all. In fact, the opposite. This comes from him. I mean, he said this openly in various interviews, and he says it in his book Dreamland. It's not done anything positive for his life. It's only been negative for him, and it's been really just a gigantic headache his entire life. He's endured endless ridicule. A lot of people just do not believe him, and so he's moved on in life. He doesn't probably at this point doesn't want to be the UFO guy. You know, he's a legitimate scientist.
Yeah.
And his passion is physics and science. And that's what he's doing today. He has his own laboratory. And I just don't think he wants to be bothered with it. He's not an individual who's looking for fame. He's not interested in profiting from any of this. And he's never changed his story. He's never changed his story. The ufologist George Knapp has done a lot of great work, I think, affirming the testimony of Bob Lazar. And Knapp's, an old school investigator.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of respect for George Knapp. And I really do believe that Lazar's testimony has been, at this point, confirmed. We haven't even talked about face peelers.
I know. We're fascinating. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk about the face peelers, which is what I really want to talk to you about. But there's just so many rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah.
And,
this is a great segue into the face peelers.
You see it. You seem to be knowledgeable on all of them, so thank you. But let's take a break. At True Classic, the mission goes far beyond just great materials and a good fit. It's about helping men show up with purpose and feel sure of themselves. Their clothes are designed to fit right in price so that any guy can feel confident without overspending. True Classic was founded to make a real difference, and that's what makes them stand out. They're driven by purpose. Whether it's helping men feel their best day to day or giving back to communities in need. I've been wearing True Classic for a while now. Whether it's working out, going out to dinner, running to meetings, you can feel the difference the moment you throw one on. Tailor where you want it, relax where you need it, no bunching, no stiff fabric, just a clean, effortless fit that actually works for real life. Forget overpriced designer brands, ditch the disposable fast fashion. True Classic is built for comfort, built to last, and built to give back. You can grab them at Target, these data broker.
Okay. So back in 2023, in the summer of 2023, in July, there was a series of videos that went viral on social media. And these videos were captured in the Peruvian Amazon in the region of Alto Nanay. And they featured a chaotic scene at nighttime in which the villagers were running around, screaming, pursuing something, and discharging their firearms into the jungle. And subsequent interviews with members of the community revealed that they had been assailed by these very strange people, beings, who were dressed in body armor. One of them said reminiscent of the Green Goblin from the Spider-Man movie, and that these assailants could fly, that they could hover a meter off the ground, and that they were impervious to gunfire, and that they were making incursions into the village, and the villagers were completely freaked out about it. A couple of other videos surfaced, and these videos were surfacing at the end of July, beginning of August. A couple of other videos surfaced from the Peruvian Amazon featuring similar phenomena.
How come we don't hear about shit like this? Like, I feel like we talk about everything else in the world except weird shit like this, and I would be way more interested in this than anything else we talk about, to be honest. But I understand why we are distracted by certain things. But, like, what happens when these motherfuckers are, like, hovering around us and we're just surprised? Like, that's just it. That's the answer. It's kind of crazy.
And one surfaced from the city of Nauta. And, as I said, they went viral all over social media. The villagers, subsequent to publishing the video, they were pleading with the Peruvian Navy to come protect them, pleading. They took some pictures where they're holding up signs. And by the way, I should say that one of these villages, it's called San Antonio de Pintuyacu, and it's very remote. It's located in the Peruvian Amazon, northwest of the city of Iquitos. And they published some pictures where they're holding signs, the villagers, begging the Navy to come protect them because they were under assault by some phenomenon. And the story kind of changed at some point to people were taking it very seriously, and then there was this explanation that was offered, and the story sort of went away. And the explanation that was offered was the explanation that emerged was that the villagers were being assaulted by river miners equipped with state-of-the-art jetpacks, and that the river miners were attempting to drive the inhabitants of San Antonio de Pintuyacu off of their lands so that they could mine the river. I learned that this narrative was concocted by two police officers who visited the village from the city of Iquitos. So I'm watching this unfold, and I'm very interested because I lived in the Peruvian Amazon. In fact, I lived not that far from this region in Alto Nanay, and I'm very familiar with the culture. I speak Spanish, and I speak that particular dialect of Spanish, which is called Charapa. And Charapa is just the jungle dialect in Peru. And so I'm very intrigued watching all of this unfold. And when the jetpack miner narrative came out, I wasn't buying it. That was ridiculous. I knew that was ridiculous because I've met river miners.
Oh, okay. I know what they're talking about. Now I know what they're talking about. Okay, so there was a time last year where there were supposedly people on jetpacks. They even said the cartel had jetpacks and they were flying around like the Green Goblin, robbing people, doing different shit. But now this guy's confirming that it wasn't that. Which I think, when you hear the story, you're probably like, yeah, there's no way the cartel is doing that, because why would they just stop? You know what I mean? Like, they don't listen to nobody. So, like, if they had that technology, why are they not using it now? Like, why don't we see that every day? And if they do, then we're doing a pretty good job hiding it, because I have not seen one person on a jetpack or a hoverboard or whatever you want to call it flying around as a cartel member. But if you have, show me, because I'm down to see it.
And they don't have... They're not equipped with state-of-the-art.
Yeah, what would they even be mining anyway?
So the river miners, what they do is they're very rudimentary operations. They have these rafts, these river boats that are all rusted out, and they're not like floating around on yachts. And what they do is very destructive to the environment. They dump mercury into the water, which of course kills everything, poisons the water. It's a real problem.
They do that?
They dump mercury in the water, and then they dredge. It's called dredging. They dredge the bottom of the river, and then they sift. They sift the residue through whatever, and to try and separate out the gold. So that's how those river miners operate. They're not sophisticated. They're not rich, and they are very seedy individuals usually, because what they're doing is illegal. You're not allowed to mine rivers like that anywhere, especially in the Amazon. But they do it anyway because there's gold to be gathered in those rivers. And so again, the explanation is that these river miners, these Peruvian river miners, somehow have attained these have come into possession of these advanced jetpack technology and body armor, and were terrorizing the villagers to try and expel them from their land. That's ridiculous.
There's no way. I mean, there's gold mines all over the world. There's no way that the most sophisticated technological gold miners are sifting gold out of a river bottom.
Well, and flying around with jetpacks.
That's what I'm getting at.
It's absurd. It's absurd. And I knew it was absurd, but the media ran with it. Media organizations all over the world, in Peru, in the United States, they ran with it. You know, and like I remember watching a news presentation on News Nation, and because they were covering the story, it was a big story. What's happening in the Peruvian Amazon? These people are freaking out. They're saying that aliens are attacking them.
This is in 2022.
This is 2023, July of 2023. The villagers are saying we're being assaulted by aliens, and they were saying they were using the term pelacara, which is face peeler. They're being attacked by pelacaras. Some of them said that the pelacaras are attacking us. Others said these are not humans, these are extraterrestrials. And so the media was very focused on this for a while. And then as soon as the Jetpack Miner story came out, case closed, mystery solved, right? Oh, it's just those pesky river miners with their jetpacks. I could not believe that the media in the United States bought that narrative, especially an organization like News Nation.
I can.
I couldn't believe it. Was so on its face absurd. Okay, and I'm sitting back watching all of this unfold, and I'm getting inundated with emails and text messages asking me, please go down there and investigate this. And I'm sort of sitting back waiting for somebody to go out there and go investigate what the heck is happening. And nobody was going. And I didn't have my passport. I was renewing my passport at the time, and so my passport, I was waiting for my new one to come in, and I'm just sitting back thinking, I'm going to have to go. I mean, I didn't even really want to. I'm just thinking, I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to go do this. And I seemed uniquely equipped to do it because I lived out there. I speak the language, and I'm very well adapted to the culture.
How big is this village? How many people?
San Antonio de Pituyacu has a population of approximately 200 inhabitants. So it's actually a larger village.
Well, now we know why the village is being attacked. There's only 200 people, and that's probably the most secluded place that aliens can go without that much noise being spread about them being there. So that makes sense, because imagine aliens landing in New York. There's no way everybody and their mother would not know in the next 10 minutes that aliens are here. You know, so I get it. I from an alien's perspective, you know, POV, trying to think from their point of view, I get it. Face peelers, they didn't really explain what the fuck that means yet. I'm curious what that's going to go into. So we'll keep watching and see what there's at.
And in fact, it's an important village. The provincial government installed a communication outpost there. So they have internet in this village. And this is a very old community. In the sense that this is one of the earliest tribes. This tribe goes back hundreds of years. They're the Iquitu people, and they're a very unique tribe. And their village is sort of the last outpost of civilization before a vast swath of Amazon jungle between the village and Ecuador. There's just untracked Amazon rainforest, uninhabitable wilderness, basically. So it's remote, but they do have internet. I mean, you know, they have, and that's very unique. Most of these remote villages don't have internet, and these guys, you know, they have such a good internet uplink that, or they have such a good connection to the internet out there, that they sit there in the evenings and watch movies on their phones. And this is how they were able to upload the videos. They filmed a particular individual named Christian, this young man who contacted me named Christian. He's the one who took the footage, and then he uploaded it from the village precisely because they have this communications outpost. So I decided that I had to go down there and conduct an investigation because nobody was going. When finally I got my new passport back, I decided to mount an expedition. And I tagged a friend of mine named Doug Thornton, who was an infantry Marine. And Doug and I embarked on this journey to the Peruvian Amazon. I made contact with the village. I talked to Christian, who again was the young man who filmed the incident, and I recorded a message on WhatsApp explaining my intentions, my desire to come and investigate the situation, which was played during a communal meeting in the village to the elders of the village. And so the chief of the village, who in Peru it's called the Apu of the village, and the elders listened to my message, and then they sent me a formal invitation to come to their village, that they would receive me in a formal manner, and that I could conduct my investigation. So I got permission from the village.
Was this still going on?
It was going on into August. By the time that I got my passport back and organized my expedition, it's October. So it's after the fact. The phenomenon died down in the month of August. So like mid-August, it had subsided. But it was still very fresh in their minds. In fact, the villagers were living on edge. The men of the village, I learned through Christian, the men of the village were every night conducting a patrol. They were patrolling the perimeter of the village. And they were, so they would be out there with their flashlights and their shotguns. And I was told that they were getting very little sleep. They were not going out to their chakras, their farms out in the jungle to harvest products. They were not going very far down the river to fish. Like the whole village had PTSD. They were running low on supplies. They needed certain medical supplies. So I decided that in addition to doing the investigation of the phenomenon, that we would also supply the village with some of the supplies that they needed, with some of the food and medical supplies that they needed. And in fact, a mutual contact, a mutual friend of ours, Pastor Darren Tyler from Conduit Church, he agreed to help me fund. He helped me fund the trip, the expedition to supply the village. And my friend Jamie Brandenburg and some of the guys from Conduit Church helped fund that expedition. So I had the funding, I had permission from the village, I chartered a riverboat in Iquitos called La Esperanza, and I hired 2 active-duty Navy commandos, Peruvian jungle Navy commandos, to go with me, because I had no idea, what I was getting into, no idea what this phenomenon was. I suspected maybe it was the cartel, or something like that. I didn't know what I was walking into. So we went very low profile. We filmed it. I published it on my YouTube channel, but we just brought in GoPros. We wanted to stay very low profile. And so in October, we went up the river. It took 2 days to get there on the riverboat. We went up the river Nanay and then the river Pintuyacu, and eventually arrived to the village. And when we got there, and by the way, the Apu met us in Iquitos and went up the river with us. So the Apu and some other individuals from the village escorted us to the village on the boat. When we arrived to the village, all of the men came down to the bank of the river, and they all had their shotguns in their hands. And they were receiving us in a very cordial way. They were happy to see us, but I was told, the Apu had told me that they had their firearms on them at all times. Since this had started to happen back in July, the men always kept their firearms on them, and that means shotguns. And these are very rudimentary firearms. These are really old, rusty shotguns. And so, in addition to supplying them with food and medical supplies, we also wanted to give them some strategic technology for their patrols. So we procured, we got them really good radios, high-powered flashlights, and commercial-grade night vision goggles that have a recording capability, so they could actually record the phenomenon with their night vision. And then we gave them some thermal binocular. And so we wanted to provision them to help, so that they could defend themselves against this, whatever this phenomenon was, again, which we had no idea what it was. So all the men of the village are there on the bank of the river. They receive us very cordially. They usher me into what they call the tambo, which is this communications installation that the government built in their village, just this big cement building. And we delivered the supplies, and they did a traditional Kitu dance for us, and they gave us masato to drink, and it was a whole spectacle. So they're very happy to have us there. We were the only ones who had come to investigate the phenomenon.
No kidding.
Nobody else had gone. Now, 2 police officers, Peruvian police officers, were dispatched from Iquitos, from the city of Iquitos, to investigate a particular incident, which was the attempted abduction of a 15-year-old girl, which is part of this narrative. I failed to mention that when we were talking about the publication of those videos that went viral on social media. Part of those videos featured footage and testimony of the attempted abduction of a 15-year-old girl. And I told you that they were claiming that, or they were saying that this was an attack by face peelers, pelacaras, and somebody had cut her neck under her jawline, and she was found unconscious, and that was part of the story. And so, because there was an attempted abduction,
How did they fend off the abduction?
She screamed, and the villagers were already in a state of high vigilance. And when she screamed, they came running with their shotguns, and they saw the assailants. And the assailants were dressed in black armored body suits, head to foot. They had helmets on. They had almond-shaped tinted eye lenses that were described to me variously as green and yellow. And most remarkably, they were floating on circular platforms. Like, the best way I can describe it is like, do you remember those circular sleds? They look like garbage can lids.
Snow sled.
Yeah, like a circular snow sled.
Saucer.
A saucer. Yeah, that's what these guys were flying around on, like circular platforms. And this is what the villagers were encountering. But when I went into the village, they received us in this very formal, cordial manner, and then we began the investigation in earnest. And we walked around the village, accompanied by the Apu, and we interviewed dozens of villagers, men, women, children. And what we heard was extraordinary. And at first, when we began to hear these testimonies, we were nervous, because at first I was thinking cartel. I was thinking this could be cartel. This could be a serious, well-funded operation, cartel operation, and that made us nervous. And in fact, I remember after conducting some of the initial interviews, we went back to the boat. We were staying on the riverboat. The riverboat was docked on the bank of the village, on the bank of the river up against the village, and we went back to the riverboat after about 2 hours of interviewing people, and we had a meeting with the Navy commandos. By the way, they're jungle commandos. They're trained in jungle survival, and really great guys. And so we had a little security meeting, and we were talking about the possibility that this is cartel, and that if it's cartel, they probably are still in the area, and they might be surveilling us. And what do? We need to make sure that we're prepared, especially at night. So that was our initial thought. Mm-hmm. Then I went back into the village, and we continued to conduct the investigations. The Apu took me to where the videos were captured, and they explained to me what happened. And I'm going to try and summarize to you what was happening. And remember, this was happening for a few weeks consecutively. Not every single day, but within those few weeks, it was happening frequently. The phenomenon always happened at night. And the first thing that the villagers would see were saucers, little saucers flying around. And the saucers had a series of lights on them. And they had some kind of a floodlight attached to the front that could be turned on and off. So the first thing that they would begin to see are these saucers, these little saucers flying around above the village.
How many?
Two. usually two. The assailants came 2 by 2. And then they would see the saucers go into the jungle and land. And shortly thereafter, 2 individuals would make an incursion into the village. And these individuals were wearing, as I said earlier, black armored bodysuits, head to foot. Again, with helmets, almond-shaped eye lenses. The assailants were described as being very tall, taller than me. I'm 6'1", and all of the villagers said they were taller than me. And I would say, how tall? A foot taller, 2 feet taller? Usually around 7 feet tall is what they would indicate. About a foot taller than me. They described them as being inhumanly agile. So some of the guys actually pursued. There was a group of villagers who pursued the assailants. And they told me these guys did not move like human beings. They were inhumanly agile. And they pursued one of these assailants through the jungle, and he dove into the river, quickly swam across the river, hopped onto the bank, and flew off into the sky.
Yeah. I don't know if like cartel members are Superman nowadays, but like I don't think it's cartel. That's just my opinion. I don't know. You know, like I know people could swim, I know people could jump, but to swim, jump, and fly, I don't know if cartel's doing that. Show me again if it's happening. Show me, but I just don't think it's happening. So yeah.
They
Without the saucer.
I think the saucer was docked over there. And in fact, in that case, I can't recall from that particular case if he hopped on the saucer or if he just disappeared into the jungle. I'm pretty sure he hopped on the saucer. Because that's what would happen. They would pursue them, and these guys would go back to where they landed, get back on their saucers, and take off at a high rate of speed. The saucers were silent, except for when they initially took off. There was sort of like a sound like compressed air. That's what the villagers expressed to me, like the sound of compressed air being released. But for the most part, they were silent. Whatever this body armor was that these assailants were wearing is bulletproof, at least against shotgun shells. I mean, these guys use birdshot in the jungle. But what they were doing, because they would shoot the assailants, some of them at point-blank range. They would discharge their shotgun at point-blank range at some of these assailants, and they told me they could hear the BBs dinking off the body armor. The assailants never spoke, except for on one occasion, which we'll talk about. And one guy told me he blasted one of these assailants with a shotgun. I think it was only about 15 feet away, maybe even closer, maybe 10 feet away. He blasted him with a shotgun. He says that this particular individual was dressed in silver body armor, unlike the rest. And he swears to me this one was silver. Everyone else said black. But for whatever reason, this one was dressed in silver body armor. He blasts him with the shotgun, and the impact knocks the guy on his butt, the assailant. And then he just jumps up and like flies back up to a vertical position and floated away. Floated. And he's not on the saucer. So two things became apparent. Number one, they're making incursions into the village initially on their saucers. They're flying and they're surfing. Mm-hmm. The villagers said they would see them. They put the flashlight up on the saucer, and they would see these guys like surfing on these things. And then when they came into the village, they disembarked from the saucers, and then they came into the village, they were still able to float based on some kind of mechanism that was incorporated into their footwear, into their boots. And they told me that the boots had 2 discs on the bottom, like one on the heel, one near the toe. They had 2 discs. And that the discs they emitted some kind of a light, and this enabled the assailants to float. And when this guy shot this one that was dressed in the silver body armor, that's how he popped back up. He was floating. And this isn't just 1 or 2 testimonies. This is dozens and dozens of testimonies from different people in the village. They all say they all saw the same thing, all of them. Not every person in the village encountered the phenomenon, but the ones that did all described the same thing in the same detail. The assailants were described as being able to bound over the huts, bound over the houses, so they could jump over the houses. As I said, they were impervious to the shotguns, and what I was about to say about that was that the villagers, realizing that their birdshot wasn't having much of an effect, what they did was they showed me how they were doing this. They would open up the cartridge, empty out the BBs, and weld some of the BBs together to make slugs. Mm-hmm. And then they would put them back in there, and they were firing, these makeshift slugs to no effect. They also set up traps around the village to try and catch one of these assailants. And the traps consist of the typical kind of traps that they use out there in the jungle. They're just a tube with a bullet inside, and there's like a hammer mechanism, and then there's a tripwire. And they usually use these to hunt small game. They put them in the game trails, and they catch. This is a part of their. This is what hunters commonly do. But this time they retrofitted these traps to shoot these assailants. So they put these welded birdshot in the cartridge, and then they lifted the tube higher. And what they were trying to calculate was the knees. They wanted to shoot the assailants at the knees. So they're about a foot off the ground. They lifted them 2 or 3 feet off the ground, and they set up 9 of them around the village. And at night, they would hear the traps going off. They'd hear the shotgun blasts. And then when they would run out there to see what happened, obviously they're expecting to see one of these assailants laying on the ground with a hole in his knee. There was nothing. No residue, no blood, nothing.
No footprints.
The footprints were there, and the footprints were 2 discs. Remember I said they have disc on the heel and on the toe. They were the imprints of discs, but you could also see like the outline of a shoe. But they were ineffective at actually killing or injuring any of the assailants. And these are very dangerous traps. In fact, one of the ladies from the village accidentally tripped one, and she got shot in the thigh about a month before we arrived. And so they quit doing the traps because they're very dangerous. So they had they decided to start patrolling the village sometime in July because they were freaked out. Everybody was completely freaked out. And they had been running their patrols every night for a few months, and were still patrolling when we got there. In addition to the discs that they were flying around on, there were also advanced aerospace vehicles involved in the phenomenon. What do I mean by that? The villagers were describing 2 things for me. They were describing the discs that the guys were flying on, circular discs, and then some of them were drawing in the dirt for me these other craft. And these other craft were they were sort of delta-shaped, but they were shaped like an acorn on its side. So they had rounded edges, but they were sort of delta-shaped, so something like that. And they were large. They were the size of like a large helicopter. And multiple villagers drew these for me in the dirt. And one particular gentleman drew for me on an acrylic board. And he described it in great detail. And these craft would hover silently over the village. And they would be stationary, and then sometimes they would move away at different rates of speed. But there were multiple witnesses to these craft. In fact, the gentleman who drew the craft for me on the acrylic chalkboard, he said that one night he was right in front of the village in the river on his canoe around 3 o'clock in the morning, pulling up his nets. And as he's pulling up his nets, he said it was like somebody turned the lights on. He said it was like the sun came up suddenly, and everything is illuminated around him. And he realized that there was something above him, so he looks up and he sees this bright light shining down on him, and he sees this craft hovering in the air about 40, 50 feet above him. And he's sitting there in the canoe, right on the river. This craft is silently hovering above him. And it's semi-transparent. He said it had like a transparent mesh around it. You could see the fuselage, you could see the body of the craft, but it was also somewhat transparent, and you could see two individuals sitting inside. You had one up in the front and one in the rear of this craft. And it was shaped precisely like what everyone else described. It was that acorn shape. Again, acorn on its side, not upright. And he was just in shock, and he said as he was looking at this craft, it had little stubby protrusions, rounded protrusions in the place of wings, so it didn't have wings. And these protrusions opened up, and there was a series of lights, like rapidly blinking lights. And he said it was like it was scanning, and then they folded it back in, and the craft began to move away. And as it moved away, there was a low-frequency hum. So, as I said, we've got advanced aerospace vehicles in play here, not just, so the narrative of jetpack miners was obviously becoming less and less, was becoming more and more absurd, let's put it that way, and the cartel explanation was becoming less and less likely as we were conducting this investigation, because I don't believe that cartels have this kind of technology. The assailants did have backpacks. Everybody did describe it. It was like a small hard shell pack that was attached to the body armor. And they clearly were using, they were floating with whatever mechanism was attached to the bottom of their boots, and they were flying on the discs. They were not jetpacks. So we surmise that maybe we're looking at some kind of a battery, maybe a mini reactor. I don't know. Maybe that's the energy source. Is the backpack. The most critical testimony that we heard came from the 15-year-old girl who was nearly abducted. Her name is Talia. And we went into the village one evening specifically with the intention to interview her, because she had a close encounter with the assailants. When we went into the village, it's the evening, and in the Amazon, in the evening, in the plaza, all the men are playing soccer, all the women are playing volleyball. And so we're walking around, everyone's kind of just having fun playing soccer or volleyball. And we look over, and we see this girl sitting all by herself, 15-year-old girl, sitting up against a hut. And she's just all by herself, just sitting there. And the Apu informed us that was Talia. And I said, well, can we talk to her? He said, well, I'll talk to her dad and see if her dad can approach her, because she's very traumatized. And so we're standing there, and the Apu goes to find the father, and she looks over at us, me and Doug. And we're pretty imposing characters. I mean, Doug's a big guy, and I'm tall, and we're imposing looking gringos, got a machete, and so forth. She looks over at us, she casually glances at us, and as soon as she sees us, she starts to tremble. And she's maybe, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 yards away. She sees us, she instantly starts to tremble. And she takes her hair and she moves it to the side of her face to block us from seeing her face. You understand what I'm saying? She takes her hair and moves. And she's sitting there trembling. And she starts to block her face like this. And instantly I recognize, wow, this is serious trauma. And our heart broke for this girl. And the father went over to her and talked to her and tried to convince her to come over and talk to us. And she wouldn't come. She got up and ran away. And then the father, he came over and said, she's just really, really traumatized. And he said, but here's what I want you to do. Come by tomorrow morning to my house, and I will bring her. And you guys will be able to talk to her. So that's what we did. The following morning, we visited their home, and we waited in the backyard, and the father eventually was able to convince Talia to come and talk to us. And when I encountered Talia, when she saw me, she started to cry, and she was trembling uncontrollably, and she started to cry, and again our hearts broke for this girl. Obviously,
What throws me off is the TikTok shirt. I'm just saying. I don't know. It's random. It's very random, but I don't know. TikTok shirt's bad random.
severe PTSD, and we were triggering it. So she related her story. I was eventually able. It took a while, for her to warm up to us. She was associating me and Doug with her assailants. So, and you'll understand why in a minute. So she had this PTSD, and she was associating us with the assailants. So I interviewed her, and she told me that one evening back in July, she was in her backyard, and she had this long stick, and she was trying to knock down some fruit from the tree to make a drink out of it for dinner. And the sun is just starting to go down. And again, the incursions only happened after dark, or as it was getting dark. And she knocked down the fruit from the tree, and she bent over to pick up the fruit. And when she bent over, she felt a wind at her back, and the dry leaves began to rustle at her feet. And she looked up to see what was generating this wind, and she saw this person dressed head to foot in black body armor, flying on a disc, and she went like this. He was flying on a disc, and behind her house, there's like a little gully, and it's a forested gully, so it's jungle back there, and then around this little forested gully, there's other houses. And there's a little hill that comes up to her house. And this assailant, who they all were calling again Pelacata, the face peeler, he floated up next to her, and then he landed next to her. And he grabbed her from behind, he put his hand over her mouth. And then she saw another one coming behind him in the same manner, floating, like surfing up on this hoverboard, this circular platform. He floats up the hill, lands in front of her, and he grabs her legs. So now she's being held from behind by one assailant, and then her legs, the other guy has her legs. And they lift her up together on their hoverboards, on their circular discs. They lift her up, and they fly her behind like this thatch roof chicken coop. And then they land. And her mouth is covered. And then they proceed, the one who was holding her feet, he took out a powder, and then he took some sort of a solution, and he mixed it in the powder. And they took a nasal syringe, and he sucked it up and shot it up her nose. And this made her feel sedated. And then they took out a long tube, looked like a toothpaste tube or something, and this had a cream in it, and the guy that was holding her mouth from behind, he started to smear this cream all over her face. And as he was doing it, the guy in front said, be careful, don't put too much on, don't apply too much because you're going to ruin the flesh. That's what she said.
In English?
So this is the first time that now we're hearing testimony that these assailants, of these assailants speaking. They spoke in Spanish.
In Spanish.
Yeah, so she referred to the larger, one was taller than the other, the larger one was taller than me, the other one was at least as tall as me, if not taller. She referred to the larger one as the gringo, and the shorter one, who was still taller than me, as the Peruvian. Because when they spoke, the larger one had a gringo accent, Spanish accent, and the other one sounded just like them. He sounded Peruvian. So he didn't have an accent. And so after they apply this stuff to her face, they take out what Doug and I think is a laser scalpel. They take out this little device that has like a laser light on it, and they begin to make an incision under her jawline. And she starts to struggle. And so they actually restarted the incision. So you can see in photos of her and in the videos that I published on YouTube, you can see the two incision lines. One was here and then the other one right under it. And as they're beginning to cut under her jawline, she's struggling. This is the last energy she has. She starts to freak out, and she gets her hand underneath the helmet of the guy behind her that still has his hand over her mouth, right? And she starts to lift up on the helmet. And he gets agitated and he freaks out a little bit because he doesn't want his face to be seen, apparently. That's what she told me. He freaks out for a second and they drop her. And when they drop her, she lets out a blood-curdling scream. And remember, the villagers are in a state of high vigilance. So the men are all sitting on in front of their houses with shotguns and flashlights. This is not the first incursion. They know something's going on. They're aware of these assailants, so they're ready. So when she screams, her brother and a group of other villagers who live in proximity to her house come running instantly. Like they're on the scene in 20 seconds. And I talked to them. They showed up with their flashlights and their shotguns. And what they saw was Talia laying on the ground, bloodied up, blood all over her face and neck. She's passed out at this point, and the assailants are hovering like this on their circular platforms. And Talia, before she passed out, after she screamed, she said that the assailants said, let's go, we got to get out of here. And then one of them said, no, we can't just leave her here. And so they tried to drag her up the hill as they're floating on their platforms. They tried to drag her up the hill, but they dropped her because the other villagers were on the scene. And so the villagers are there with their flashlights trained on these guys, two of them, and they maneuver to where there's an opening in the canopy, and they shoot up through the canopy. And Talia was, of course, unconscious, and her face had swollen up. She said whatever that cream was that they applied to her face, it made her face swell up, made her flesh swell up on her face. They took Talia to a village down the river where they have a better medical installation, and they treated her wounds. And eventually when she came to, which I think was the next day, her face was swollen for 3 days. She was in the medical facility for a while. They diagnosed her with severe PTSD after this event. And she had severe PTSD when I was talking to her. Trembling, she was talking very quietly, and obviously just very traumatized. And her father was traumatized. Her father was there as we were talking. He was filling in some of the details. And so obviously something horrific had happened to this young girl, and her testimony synchronizes with what everyone else was saying. So apparently, somebody was out there in the Peruvian Amazon with advanced technology, certainly advanced hoverboard technology, but not just that, advanced aerospace vehicles that could hover silently in the air, and was terrorizing this village for some unknown reason. Definitely not miners with jetpacks. Now, there was another incident that I mentioned earlier. This was happening, by the way, in various villages. This was not the only village.
There were. Has this been happening anywhere else?
This was happening in various villages in Alto Nanay, in that region of Peru, and in other regions of the Peruvian Amazon. Reports of the face peelers were surfacing everywhere. So let me address the face peeler thing real quick. So Pelacata, face peeler, this is a legend that goes back decades in Peru. When I lived I lived there for 10 years in the Peruvian Amazon. When I lived there, I heard of the legend of the face peelers, and this was sort of like a face peeler was sort of like a boogeyman, and the mothers would tell their children, "Don't go out alone at night because the face peeler will get you." And the villagers, the indigenous people, there was no consensus on who the face peelers were. Some of them thought the face peelers were extraterrestrials, aliens. They can't be human precisely because of this technology that's being deployed, right? Others believed that the face peelers were gringos who were there to harvest organs and for whatever reason to harvest faces. This phenomenon, this legend, goes back to the mid to early 80s, but not further back than that. It began in the 80s. And I know that for a fact because I talked to the guys in the village, and they specifically told me that their fathers told them about the face peeler phenomenon, but it was not happening in the time of their grandfathers. So it was happening in the 80s. That's when it began. So this was not the first encounter with a phenomenon similar to what these people were experiencing, and that's why they started calling it the Pelakara, that these are Pelakaras, because for them, this was somewhat familiar. There had been, in the past and during this particular episode in the Peruvian Amazon, individuals who were discovered with their face removed, or with half of their face removed. I published a YouTube video in which this video got age restricted precisely because of this footage that was in the video of a young man that was being carried out of the river by some police officers, and it's apparent that his face, 3/4 of his face, had been surgically removed. This was not the result of piranhas chewing on his.
That's fucking crazy. Like, I don't know what the obsession is over the face. It's kind of scary, kind of weird at the same time on why they're just coming down taking your face. But that's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre type shit. It's kind of weird. You know, it's like got Leatherface now with hoverboards coming down to take your face. It's kind of crazy.
Face, piranhas leave nicks. I mean, they can clean the bone really well, but
It's precision cuts.
but these are precision. This is laser cuts around the guy's face. And the flesh of his face is totally gone. You just see the skeletal structure beneath. That sort of thing has been fairly common in the Peruvian Amazon, again, going back to the 80s. Now, when I say fairly common, I don't mean like every week or every month or even every year, but every now and again, somebody would turn up like that. And hence, face peeler. That's why they call them face peelers. When I was there, just about a week or two before I arrived, maybe a few weeks before I arrived, there was an incident that happened to a young boy from a different village called Bagasan. And I learned about this when I was in Nauta. And this boy, he had been attacked. Same description. The assailants had the same description. Black armored bodysuits. The whole situation was the same. And they had cut into his neck under the jaw on both sides, and as they were apparently attempting to remove his face, somehow the boy was rescued. I don't know the details of how he was rescued, but somebody showed up on the scene and the assailants fled. This boy, there's footage of him in Peru, like they put everything on TV. The news will display really
Graphic stuff.
Really graphic car accident. They'll show the whole thing without blurring anything. So there's clips of this boy with these deep lacerations under his jawline and his neck, and he looks like he has two gills cut into his neck, just like the skin is just flapping and it's just pouring blood. And there's a footage of this boy. He's probably 9 or 10 years old. Sitting in the clinic and just obviously in a state of shock. He lost a lot of blood. Fortunately, they were able to save his life. They sewed him up, they gave him some blood, and he survived. But he was attacked by the same phenomenon. We went to Nauta to investigate a particular case. There was a video that surfaced in Nauta that the villagers were freaking out. It's nighttime. They're pointing at something with their flashlight. And this something that they're pointing at, that they're highlighting with the flashlight, that they're illuminating, it looks like an alien, like a big gray alien up in the tree that's kind of moving. And I don't know if it is or not, but you can imagine that it could be something like that, because the guy who's training his flashlight on it is saying, "There it is, it's right there. Do you see it? It's right there in the video." And so I wanted to go investigate this. I wanted to look at this location during daylight hours. And now understand, the city of Iquitos, which is a fairly large city in the Peruvian Amazon, you can't, it itself is remote, even though it's got a fairly large population. The only way to get to Iquitos is by boat or by airplane. There's no roads. And so I wanted to go investigate this. I wanted to look at this location during daylight hours. And now understand, the city of Iquitos, which is a fairly large city in the Peruvian Amazon, you can't, it itself is remote, even though it's got a fairly large population. The only way to get to Iquitos is by boat or by airplane. There's no roads. The only place you can get by road from Iquitos is Nauta. And Iquitos is where the Amazon River begins, by the way. That's where the Amazon River begins. So this is intense Amazon jungle out here. And Nauta is like about, I don't know, maybe like an hour to an hour and 20-minute drive from Iquitos. It's the only place you can get by road. Nauta has a population of 35,000. Okay, it's not a village. It's a city. And Nauta has, there's a military installation there. The Navy has a presence. The Army has a presence. There's Army and Navy bases in Iquitos. There's a large police force. There's helicopters on site. There's Navy vessels on the river there. It's a very well defended area.
A lot of infrastructure.
We're not talking about a little village anymore.
Yeah.
We're not talking about some remote village out there where maybe river miners want to drive these people off their land so that they can mine the river. That narrative is dead because the same phenomenon was happening in Nauta. And nobody's driving 35,000 inhabitants out of that place, right? And again, you've got helicopters in play now. You've got automatic weapons in play in regard to the way the armaments of the police force and the military there. So it's much more risky environment for these assailants to be operating in. Nevertheless, they were operating in Nauta. When I found the location I wanted to see during the day, and I interviewed the neighbors who live out front, and I learned that aside from this event where they were training their flashlight on something in the jungle, and it was like above a house, I learned that it was actually behind the house. The trees were actually further back than I had thought initially from the video. They said that they were seeing flying saucers, and that there was a large saucer that had perched above this house, above this tree, and it shot a light down. And there was like half a dozen witnesses to this. And they said that, and this was all happening at the same time as the incidents out in the jungle. And they told me that on the outskirts of Nauta, they would hear gunshots going off. And when they would talk to the police officers or to the villagers who happened to be walking around at night, coming in from hunting or whatever, to the inhabitants, not villagers, the inhabitants of Nauta, they described the same exact phenomenon. Individuals who were dressed, people who were dressed in black armored bodysuits, flying around in these circular platforms. Now that's really important because, as I said, the narrative that jetpack miners driving people off, driving these indigenous people off their land, impossible. That is not the case. That narrative is dead in the water. That's not going to happen in a village, in a city, 35,000 inhabitants. It's just not going to happen. So something else is going on, and I don't know what that something else is. But the phenomenon is deadly serious, and it's real. And not just the people in San Antonio and Pinto Yacu, but the people in Nauta that I talked to, and in Iquitos. It's not a joke to them. And none of them, by the way, believe it's miners with jetpacks. When I was able to, we had a couple of meetings with the villagers, with the elders, and with the men of the village, and I proposed to them this idea that the media had run with, that there's river miners wearing jetpacks. They laughed. They literally all burst out laughing at the notion that was the explanation phenomenon. And finally, while we were still out in San Antonio and Pinto Yacu, Doug and the Navy guys that were accompanying us, they actually trained the villagers, the men, how to conduct the proper patrol. So they trained them how to march in the patrol line. They taught them, how to turn in a synchronized fashion so they don't shoot each other, and all of that. Doug divided the village into sectors so that they could communicate with the radios that we brought them, and it was really impressive. I mean, they trained this. They adapted to this training very quickly, and then they were executing the training at nighttime. As we were sitting in our riverboat, Doug would be communicating that with them on a radio, and we would watch them walking the patrol the way that they were trained to do, communicating with the radios, using the night vision goggles and the thermal goggles, and it was really cool that They took to that so quickly, and they were very enthusiastic. And since our investigation, the phenomenon has ceased.
That hasn't happened again.
No. And I've been in contact with the village, and from time to time I check in, and it's all quiet out there. They've not been revisited by that phenomenon, and it's died down in the Peruvian Amazon, generally speaking. Now I'm going to tell you one more incident. So when I came back, somebody, this individual contacted me on X and provided me with the contact number of this person in the city of Yurimaguas in the Peruvian Amazon who they wanted me to call and interview. Because this person apparently had a close encounter with a pelacata, with one of these assailants. And I believe his name was Pablo. I'm familiar with the city of Yurimaguas. I've been there on many occasions. And so I called him on his cell phone, and we discussed the incident. And what he told me was that one evening, he lives in a homestead. So it's not even a village, it's a homestead in the jungle. And outside of the city of Yurimaguas, he told me that one evening, he was bathing in the river, just as the sun was going down, and him and a couple of other guys were bathing in the river. And somebody started shouting from one of the houses in the homestead, "Pelacata! Pelacata!" And he came running out of the river. He threw a towel around his waist. He runs into his house and he grabs a shotgun and a flashlight. And then he starts to look for the intruders. And he sees them. He sees two guys sort of snooping around the outskirts of this homestead, describes them in the exact same way, black armored bodysuits, the helmets, the almond-shaped eye lenses, and he pursues. And he starts to chase these guys through the jungle, and they're running, and he's running behind them, and he gets close enough to actually discharge his firearm at them, and he hears the dinking of his birdshot off their body armor. And he said the first guy, and I get the impression that they ran back to their platforms, the first guy took off. He accelerated into the sky. The second guy was having a hard time because apparently this Pablo damaged his suit. He's having a hard time lifting off the ground. And so Pablo says that he sprinted at the guy and tackled him. He grabbed him around the waist. And as he was holding him around the waist, this assailant was attempting to lift off into the sky. But he couldn't do it. And he took out, the assailant took out some sort of a laser device and shot Pablo with it. Like he flashed it on him, and Pablo instantly went unconscious. And he woke up to his father and his brother were rousing him, and he had to go to the hospital because he had heart trouble. And he's been diagnosed with the timing of his heart is off. So something like some sort of electrical pulse was discharged into his body, and he now has a heart condition because of it. Pablo was deadly serious about this whole incident, and it's just a confirmation. And this happened later on. This happened a couple of months after the incursions into San Antonio de Pintuyacu, Nauta, and in Alto Nanay. So what the heck is going on? I mean, what is this? This is very, very disturbing. And one final detail. It happened that during this period of time, from the end of June to the end of July, there was a joint military operation happening in Peru. It was called Resolute Sentinel. And it involved 8 different nations, including the United States. It was headed by the United States. The United States, Great Britain, Ecuador, Bolivia, Panama, Uruguay, and a couple of other, Brazil, and Peru. And it involved the Air Force, it involved the Marines, it involved Space Force, it involved the Coast Guard, and a couple of other agencies.
This is verified?
Yes. It's called, as I said, it's called Resolute Sentinel 2023. and they were running operations in Peru. And it was primarily based, like I think it was primarily sea-based operations and ostensibly like rescue-type missions and stuff like that. But it was a big operation. And I was told when I was in Peru, I talked to a general in Peru, a Navy general, and I interviewed him first in Lima before I went out to the jungle, to the village. And we talked about this face peeler phenomenon, which he completely blew off. He didn't think he thought it was, he bought the jetpack miner explanation. And but he confirmed that there was a joint operation underway. He was retired, but very, very prestigious guy in Peru, high up in the Navy. He was an admiral. And he told me that there was actually military assets on the Amazon. Navy assets on the Amazon. I don't know, Peruvian, U.S., probably Brazilian or something. And that it was quite unusual in that there was a lot of assets deployed for this training exercise, Resolute Sentinel 2023. And it just so happens to coincide with these incursions into the village, with the face peeler phenomenon, from the end of June to the end of July. Now, for whatever that's worth, I don't know. Strange coincidence. So I wondered, and this is, I probably don't believe this, but here's a hypothesis. You know how sometimes these military operations are used as a cover? So you have like an op that's a cover, like a Resolute Sentinel, for example. They're doing training and they're doing training for rescue missions and so forth. But maybe sometimes that can be a cover for an actual operation that's happening in the country or in the region, in the theater. By the way, this was Southcom. This was Southern Command, and it was headed by the Air Force. It's possible, at least. Let's just put it in these terms. There's a chance, and I'm not saying I buy this. I'm just going to throw this out there. What if there was a serious threat, something out there in the jungle, human or non-human, whatever? There's some kind of a threat out there, and they're using Resolute Sentinel 2023 as a cover to run an actual op in the jungle to combat that threat. That's one. That's like, I like to think of that as the predator hypothesis, right? Like there's some bizarre phenomenon happening in the jungle, like the Predator movie, and they send in commandos under the cover of this Resolute Sentinel and assets. That way they can place assets in the region without drawing attention. Oh, they're just running Resolute Sentinel 2023. The other option I don't like. The other option is that this is part of the op. This is part of they're testing some kind of technology. That one,
low-key, could be one or the other. Definitely could be one or the other. I didn't want to say it, but he said it, so definitely could be one or the other. I agree. You don't want to really go into much detail of that. I would hope not. I would really hope it is aliens and not us, but you never know. You never know. That is a pretty sketchy amount of countries to be all involved in this one little project, or whatever the project was, at the same exact time as all this weird shit happening, so I don't know, nothing's a coincidence, right? That's what they say.
one I don't like because that would implicate the United States government in this nefarious activity. I don't like that one, and I don't really believe that that's a plausible explanation, but
I don't like it either. I'm gonna agree with that. I don't like it either. We're not gonna go in deep detail with that, but it is just a little.
A lot of people always inevitably throw that out there whenever I talk about this.
Well, I don't think the U.S. government would be working with Uruguay or Ecuador or Bolivia or any country like that they're just not near as technologically advanced. Do you?
Well, they were. Resolute Sentinel involved all of those.
I mean, it's as far as like an operation.
No, the op would be the Resolute Sentinel would be the cover.
I get it.
Right.
I get it. But I don't think that they would involve all these other countries.
I have no idea. I don't really have. I mean, you would know better than me. I don't know. But it's an interesting coincidence. I mean, it's part of the picture. Whether they may be totally disassociated. It's just, I think it's an important detail to add into this equation.
Has this been happening anywhere else in the world?
No.
Only in Peru.
Now, I heard that, and I'm not sure, I never was able to verify this, but I heard that the phenomenon was happening right across the border in the Brazilian Amazon, right across the border with Peru. So, generally speaking, the same region of the jungle. I was not able to verify that, but there were, as I said, multiple villages involved in this. Multiple villages.
What do you think it was?
Well, if her recall of the incident that happened to her is accurate, and the reason why I say that is, remember that they sedated her, that they shot that stuff up into her nose, and she's got severe PTSD. So it is possible that Talia, previous to this assault, was convinced that these were gringo, the face peelers were gringos, and they were there harvesting organs and stuff, so that when they assaulted her, she confabulated some of the details, like hearing them speak. That's possible. She has severe PTSD, and that does happen. And she maybe recalls hearing them speak when in reality they didn't. That possibility has to be considered because that's a real phenomenon, especially in
I don't
traumatic.
know about that. I mean, a lot of times when people go through traumatic experiences, that's just what they always go back to, and they remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, and that's also very possible. So that's the second possibility, is she recalled everything precisely as it happened. And if she's accurate in her recall, then these are human beings. One of them apparently is a gringo. One of them is a Peruvian. And they're with some unknown, maybe transnational aerospace corporation. I don't know. I mean, what are the explanations here? What could this be? Obviously, this is exceedingly nefarious. And one thing that baffles me, if these guys are out there to harvest faces, and they've got all this advanced technology, then why do they suck so bad at their job, right?
Yeah.
You would think that they'd be able to take faces left and right, and they can blow into town and take 10 faces and leave. Why the extended?
Why wouldn't they just take the entire specimen?
That's right, exactly.
Wouldn't
And maybe they intended to with Talia. at some point.
kidnappers?
Right.
They're horrible kidnappers.
They're really bad.
They're kidnapped all the time.
They're really bad at peeling faces if they're face peelers. So it seems to me that the operation is more a terror operation. Like they're so let's consider this for a moment. Let's say that maybe these assailants are using the face peeler legend as cover for some other operation that's going on in the jungle. This is another possibility. And they want the villagers to think and to perpetuate the idea that the face peelers are here. And so all they would need to do in that case is terrorize the villages, every now and again abduct somebody, or that's why they would drop the person and take off, for example, instead of
It would just bring heightened awareness, though.
yeah, but
So it would bring more attention.
But maybe they want that specific attention. Maybe they want the face peeler narrative out there for whatever reason. Like to me, that's what seems the most plausible to me. Is they're not really interested in harvesting faces, because if they were, apparently they can do it with ease. With all this technology that they have, why would they be making these continual incursions into the village? And by the way, I didn't say this, but some of the villagers told me that they were literally being terrorized. So they were huddling in their houses at nighttime in San Antonio Pituyacu, in July. The families would huddle in their houses, and they would have whatever weapons that machetes, whatever weapons that they had on hand. And when the face peelers would come, it was terrorizing. This one lady said that they would again, what they're calling face peelers would be pulling on the boards of her house and knocking on the boards of their house, like to intentionally terrorize them. And she said one time she walked out of her house because they heard commotion. Her and her family members walked out of the house with flashlights, and they saw two things. They saw one of those acorn-shaped craft hovering above the village, and they saw a couple of these guys in the bodysuits. One of them jumped over the house. And she drew in the dirt the shape of the craft. It was the same thing everybody else drew. So, like, why? What's going on? They're terrorizing these villagers. Why? That's the question. And I don't know the answer. I'm totally baffled by this thing. I can tell you that it happened. It happened. Mm-hmm. But what is the nature of this phenomenon? I have no idea. It's quite frankly, it's terrifying.
Man, I can't think of any reason that would happen.
Whatever it is, it's ominous. A little bit reminiscent of the drone situation that was going on here last year or this past fall, right? I can't remember the exact time frame that was happening. But we had those drones hovering in different parts of the country, New Jersey, New York, I don't know about New York, but New Jersey, the East Coast, some were spotted over Washington, D.C. That whole situation was, to me, it had face peeler vibes. I mean, there seemed to be no logical explanation. And there really has never been any explanation.
Yeah.
It feels like
those weren't little acorn things, or big acorns.
Yeah, so the size of SUVs and but it's reminiscent to me. It's reminiscent. This bizarre phenomenon that's just going on for multiple days
Since the 80s.
No, I'm talking about the drone phenomenon.
Oh, the drones. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying when I saw the drone phenomenon happening on the East Coast of America, it gave me face peeler vibes. You know, there seemed to be no logical explanation. Why are these drones just day after night after night continually hovering around New Jersey? And the government is being very mum about the whole thing. The explanations that are coming forth don't make any sense. There's like mass hysteria breaking out, because mass hysteria is part of the face peeler phenomenon as well. That's definitely in the equation, mass hysteria. That certainly was happening during the drone incident on the East Coast. There was mass hysteria. So there was a lot of people.
I think we made a lot of headway in this whole podcast. I told you this shit is long as fuck. It's 3 hours. Very, 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 very long podcast. As much as I want to keep getting weird and continue in this whole thing, I think we could take a pause, and continue this on the next stream. I'll definitely do this tomorrow because I do want to finish this one and get into some other topics. But this one was cool. I didn't think we were going to get into face peelers, but interesting, very interesting. Yeah, we are definitely going to continue. We're going to finish this one. I'm going to find some more. So I'm going to do some research tonight, see what other weird shit we can get into. I do have some updates for you guys for Harmony and SelfOS, so I will be coming with that tomorrow as well. Those of you that are on the platform and on SelfOS already, I'm going to send you guys an email with some updates on what's going to be happening with SelfOS. So we're going to be doing some things where we're going to update the platform a little bit. So you'll get that update. I'll show you that guys update tomorrow. But yeah. We're going to get weird. We're going to get even more weird. I'm going to find more shit, like I said. We're going to just dive deep, man. We're going to go deep in these rabbit holes because it's fun. It's good to talk about these type of topics before they start happening in our country. And, at least we won't be shocked. The 51 of us, right? So, well, 52 of us, including me. So, I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad you guys always watch with me. It's been a good time. I'll be back. We got an hour left on this video. If you want to watch the video yourself, you can find it on YouTube. It's a Sean Ryan Show. If not, you want to wait for me, I will be back tomorrow, probably around the same time, like 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock-ish, and we'll get weird and talk about it. So I'll be back.